now, ladies and gentlemen, we are transitioning into the second phase of our video, and that phase deals with the software side. So we've given Bill the server guy from Intel a quick break, and we are now introducing Jimmy B, the server guy. And just in case you're wondering here, Bill is the server guy from Intel, and he deals primarily with server hardware. Jimmy B here is the server guy from Microsoft, and he deals primarily with server software. So we are currently installing Windows Small Business Server 2011 right here. We've already got it loaded onto our RAID array, and we're going to walk through quickly the installation, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what makes a server operating system, especially as compared to, say, a Windows 7 home operating system environment.
Great. And before we start off, thanks for having us here today to be part of this video.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you again. I do want to point out that we are showing a brand new product to the Small Business Server family line, which is Small Business Server 2011 Essentials. Which is ideally suited for our small business in many capacities, and we'll show you that as we go through the installation experience and into the product itself.
Okay.
All right. So here we are presented with a typical setup screen process, very familiar with what you may see setting up Windows 7, for instance, for the first time. We'll set the country, the time, currency, and the keyboard. We're going to verify the date and settings of the time. That looks right for us. We'll go ahead and continue forward. At some point, there's going to be the EULA, which we'll go ahead and accept.
We read all that earlier.
Right. So this is the part of the installation experience where we do ask you to go back into your media and open up and find the PID key, which will then enter into the installation experience.
I'll just read this off for our viewers at home.
So we've gone ahead and inputted our product key. We'll go ahead and let that authorize in the background. Once that's done, there's just a few more steps that we'll take that will be asked here. For instance, it's going to ask, what's the company name? And this company name is important because it's going to be displayed on the server itself. And it's also going to help us as we go ahead and create our internal domain, our Active Directory. So let's pick Newegg Inc. as an example.
That sounds good.
Great. And as you can see now, it's created an internet domain name for us. We'll use that later as we're doing remote access of the server itself. You could also use that when you're using the server as a web server, external facing web server for your customers. The server name, it's called server today. Do you want to call it something different?
How about NETV server?
Sure. NETV server. Great. So we're going to use that name, and that name is going to be important for us as we continue with some of the setup processes past this.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and accept these as our inputs. And it's going to take us through some other steps to personalize the server. It's going to ask us a few more questions. First and foremost is the administrator name and password. And we'll set this up for the first time. The first time we'll set this up, and we don't have to deal with it again. So we're going to call this, how about NETV admin?
Sounds good. It needs a secure password.
It does.
Numbers, letters, and symbols.
All right. Now that we've set up the administrator password, that's the password and the account that we'll need to actually administer the machine and the operating system. Now it's going to ask us for a standard user password. Think of a standard user as anyone who's joining the domain or using the server on a day-to-day basis, an employee, a coworker, whomever. So let's call this standard user Ted. Okay, that was a quick fat finger, what we call in the software industry. Let's do it one more time. Great. Great. Go ahead and do that. With our operating systems, we do ask if you want to keep the machine up to date, and that's really calling into the Windows Update service in the cloud. So if the machine needs any patching or if there's new updates that we push out, this setting will actually allow it to do it automatically. We do present with a couple options, which is use the recommended settings from Microsoft, install the updates only, or if you want to control the update process and control which updates are installed in the machine, you do have the option of opting out. We recommend going with the recommended settings, so we'll go ahead and click that for purposes of this.
It's an appropriate name for recommended.
Absolutely. We only use the best names in our menus. So we are now in the process of the operating system configuring the server for the first time. So this is the typical experience of what an owner manager of a small business would see when they're setting up their server for the first time. Once this is done, we'll actually get into what's called the control module or the control panel. we'll go into that and we'll start to administer some other quick tasks, and we'll show you that when it shows up.
Okay. So we skipped forward a few minutes here. We've gone through the initial setup. So the server is now ready to use. That process will take anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes depending on the hardware that you have in your system. And at this point, you have a few options.
Yep.
So what are some things that the typical home user might do at this point?
Sure. So in this case, the business user has gone through the setup experience. In the background, if you care to know, it's set up Active Directory in the company's domain. Active Directory is important. The technology's not so important for the average small business owner-manager for a system like this, but it's important because it helps enforce security policies, and it helps enforce a lot of the other roles that a typical server operating system supports. So that's all good and done, it's set up, and the customer never has to worry about that again. We did a lot of work on that. So now we're at a screen where it's presenting to you the admin's account username, which we've set up in the past, and the first account name, which is Ted. It does prompt you, as you can see here from the HTTP URL, to go to each of the PCs that will now be connecting to the server to download what's called connector software or Launchpad, and we'll show you that step in just a little bit. But post this, we'll just simply close the installation experience, and what you'll see boot up eventually is the dashboard, which is the management console.
All right, and that's how an administrator can come in here and, while being directly connected to the server, to set up those management console.
That's exactly it. So let's go ahead and jump into that.
Okay.
So this is the dashboard or the management console, and this has been written for the small business user in mind. So a lot of the technical speak that you would normally see in Windows Server or core products, we've really rethought a lot of that language so it speaks to the average small business owner manager who may not have a lot of the breadth of the technology insight in the background.
You don't necessarily need an IT degree to understand everything.
That's absolutely it. And you'll see that presented here. There's a bunch of quick tasks that we've outlined here for the average small business owner manager to go ahead and start to configure the system. They could use it exactly as it is today, or they can look down this completed task list and start to configure some of those tasks that are really important to them.
Okay.
All right, so some examples of that is making sure that you're set up for updates, making sure your server is backed up. So you do have the option to have a supplementary backup solution on the back end to back up the entire server, so just should the server ever go down.
We were mentioning this earlier. We have a RAID 1 configuration here right now, so we do have data redundancy on 2 drives, but we did want to feature some of the small business server's capabilities for setting that up. That I imagine it would have some tools to synchronize the data on your maybe an offsite location or somewhere else.
Yes, you could do it certainly next to the server itself or go offsite, but there's options that allow you to schedule the backup of the server itself at whatever time is convenient for the owner manager. Remote access, that's single-handedly one of the most important features of Small Business Server Essentials. It allows a customer, when they're away from their office, whether it's a small office or a large office, to remotely access a server and access files just as they would if they're sitting next to the server or in the domain that the server's operating in. So that's really important feature set. Setting up options for sharing. So this is a file server now, and you'll see some of that functionality in just a little bit. And you can dial up or dial down the access of the users in that domain to certain folders. So if you have a folder that you just want access to, you can set up so that only you have the permissions to get that folder and won't be something that other people access, or you can set up just general folders for folks in the company to access at any time.
That's what you're mentioning, Active Directory handles that.
Absolutely. Those are the security policies we mentioned earlier that get enforced in features like that.
And so your individual logins like TED that we set up, and you can set their levels of permissions to be able to access certain stuff to not be able to access others.
That's right. That's absolutely it. And that's security enforcement. And then, of course, what's really interesting about Small Business Server and why we're really excited is this is the first of our server operating systems that actually has integration to cloud services. Think of online cloud services like Office 365, and we'll show you a little bit about that in just a little bit.
Okay.
So this is some common tasks. I'll do a little test drive of the ribbon up here to show you some of the typical command lines that an owner manager would use to configure the server again. So here we have an overview of all the servers. If I were interested in adding a new server, a new account to my server, it's as simple as just going through a wizard, answering a couple of names, setting a password, setting its permissions levels, and it's done and ready. These are all tasks in a normal Windows Server Operating Core product that there's a little bit more steps involved because the server admin is a bit more knowledgeable. And here, we've really simplified that for the average owner manager to set up an account very easily. And likewise, if you want to reset that account's password or actually remove the account, it's within steps. So
Okay.
that's very simplified. I like this view quite a bit. This is the computers and backup view for two reasons. One is I get to see all of the computers on my network. We also have a status indicator here of when they've been backed up. So if I'm very eager in backing up my PCs and making sure that my employees have their PCs backed up, I'll get a real live view on when their last backup was. Another important thing here that you can see just off to the side is the alerts. And alerts are very important because what we do is we check the PC health of the clients that are connecting to the domain. So if there's a PC, say a road warrior who hasn't been in the office for a couple weeks and therefore hasn't updated his PC, Small Business Server Essentials will actually alert us that they're out of compliance by way of patching or updates or whatever, and so we can go ahead and address that right away.
So if there's a security vulnerability that comes out and
Right.
that one's not updated, you can see it right there?
Right, and if the PC hasn't been backed up through Windows Update Service, we can easily see that it's not been done and we can go ahead and address that.
Okay.
That's really important for customers who care about their security and making sure the PCs are all patched and operating up to spec.
Okay.
So that's really important. And then, of course, you have the general operating system information straight down through here. Now, folders. This is really interesting as well. This is the server folder view. There's a few default server folders that get set up as we go through the initial setup. These are computer backup. So every PC that joins this domain will have a scheduled backup time. And that backup allows you to restore the PC if the PC were to absolutely fail. So say the hard drive of that PC fail, you can do a bare metal restore straight from this image. So the operating system, any of the applications, or any of the files could be restored directly from Small Business Server Essentials. That saves a lot of time and effort for the average small business.
So you can control which computers and how frequently it will
Absolutely.
refresh that backup?
Mm-hmm. And you can manually back up those computers at any time. If you back one up and 5 minutes later decide you want to back it up again, you can instantly do that. The backup cycles get smaller and smaller after the initial backup,
It's
which
just
helps
doing
on
those
performance, incremental
incremental,
backups.
okay.
That's right. So these are some of the default folders. There's a company folder and there's a specific user folder. And again, you can open up or decide to open up new folders and assign specific permissions to whoever you have in your organization at that time. So you can lock them down. This is a hard drive view. I like this view as well. As a bit of a tech head myself, I like to understand how many hard drives I have, what capacity, the state of the hard drive is itself.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very good view for detecting hard drive failure. So if a hard drive were to fail, it takes a guesswork out of understanding which of those hard drives has failed, and you can easily go and address that right away.
Okay.
So that's a hard drive view. And then the add-ins is really where we bring into life the online services. So we talked about Office 365. We also built a few add-ins ourselves. One is a Windows Phone 7 add-in. So with this add-in, I can actually remotely access the server with my Windows Mobile 7 phone, which allows me to open files, share files, access folders. And if I'm the admin, then I can actually create new users or reset passwords. I can do some management, administrative management functions from my phone itself. We're looking to have similar add-ins available for the iPhone and Android platform down the road.
Oh, very nice.
Another add-in that we've created is the what we call the Windows 7 Pro Pack. And the Pro Pack is essentially a security policy, not to get too techy about it, but it allows for the redirection of certain folders. So there will be a folder on the PC that will always be backed up to the server at every time. And that's just another layer of resiliency built into our backup story to make sure that that PC is well protected, well secured.
So if you have very vital files or like a folder with all your business files in it, accounting stuff, that sort of thing,
Exactly.
you can set that to be backed up as frequently
Correct.
as possible.
Correct. And then we have a number of very close ISVs to Microsoft, security ISVs who have security add-ins that you can also add into the server itself.
Okay.
So the application model with SBS Essentials or SBS 2011 Essentials is actually pretty simple too. So this add-in approach allows you to easily install applications on top of the server, be able to see them working and operating, and then depending on what the application is, be able to manage it from this view too.
Okay.
So this is the Small Business Server 2011 dashboard for Essentials. I call it the Management Console. This is the view of where you can go in to configure the server, but ideally, once the owner manager has configured the server, it's a set and forget. So they'll set it, and they'll just move on and do what they do, which is their business. And this then quietly runs in the background.
Even for any kind of updates or maintenance that you might need to do, especially being able to log into this remotely, this is a very friendly approach to it.
Absolutely.
The ribbons that you guys have set up here, and
Yep.
very straightforward. You're definitely not very in-depth technical, but you can perform a lot of those tasks that
Right.
a lot of people probably had only heard about but didn't quite know how to set up themselves.
Right, and we have a lot of customers today who are are replicating the functionality of a server with a PC. And I know Bill, the server guy, talked about the pros and cons of a server versus a PC. We've made this platform very easy for the average user to manage, navigate, and to use. And so we've taken a lot of the guesswork out of the technology of what it means to set up your server, run a server, and help make it very simple here. And then you'll see on the launch pad, we've actually transferred even some of the alerts. So you don't have to be into the console or the dashboard to get status or health results. You can see it from your alerts yourself. So we really thought through how to make this an easy to use server platform.
Yeah, definitely seems that way.
Yeah.
So next up, shall we take a look at the client?
Yeah, let's do that. So what we'll do here is we'll just pretend that this is now minimized. The server's off and running quietly. We're going to go to a client, and I'll show you how to tunnel into the server using a very simple URL, and we'll go ahead and download the connector software.
Sounds good. So Jim has now moved over to our Newegg TV test bed, a separate computer that we have set up. It is connected to our router, so they're all on the same network right now. And Jim's going to load the client program to show how the remote access works.
That's right, Paul. So to complete the total installation experience, we've already done the server, and that's off and running and doing quite well. Now we need to go out to the PCs that are in the environment and connect those to the server, and that's through what I'll show you how to do now.
Okay.
So if you remember back to the installation screen, there was a URL presented. We're going to go ahead and plug that into the browser here. It is NetTV server, /connect. And this is a standard URL that you'll see. The only variance is whatever you call the server. Okay. But other than that, the URL is standard. So here we are. We're now RDSing into, or connecting rather, back into the server. It's prompting us to go ahead and install some connector software. So we'll go ahead and do that now. We're going to go run this. I do want to point out, as we're doing this, that we have written the software so it supports, of course, Windows, but it also supports Macs. And that's actually a pretty big opportunity because Mac users are benefiting quite a bit from server infrastructure of this nature. So we're going to go ahead and run this. There's going to be a couple of questions that it'll ask, like when do you want to schedule your backup, so on and so forth. We'll have to type in the admin's name and password to initiate the connection in a secure way back to the server, and then we're off and running.
Okay.
So we've downloaded the client bits. We're going to go ahead and run that, follow the prompting of the screens. So the connector software will connect your computer, monitor the health of the computer, back up your computer daily, and manage your server using the computer. That's the management console, as we mentioned earlier. It's going to go ahead and install some small bits that it needs to install. And this will take about a few more minutes. We've advised our customers that if they have a multiple number of PCs in their environment, to start this process on one PC and continue on the others. When they come back, this should all be ready to go. So they'll just key in the last remaining bits of the installation experience, and we're off and running.
Multitasking always important for small
Absolutely,
business.
absolutely. And then once all this is done, that owner, small business owner manager, is off and running. They've set up their server for the first time. As you can see, it's not that difficult, and everything is backed up, secured, and once remote access is activated, accessible from outside the office. So now they can go on to be more productive. They have a secure, centralized resource in their network that can back up all PCs, act as a file share, act as a web server if even necessary, and a remote access point.
And once you've set up the Active Directory on the server itself,
right,
and then you've assigned different users and different passwords, they can log in on any of those client machines.
Correct.
And they'll have the Active Directory security as well as whatever permissions are assigned to them.
Right. And the best thing about what we've done with Active Directory is, as you saw from the installation experience, we never present Active Directory to the user. It's all seamlessly done in the background, very simplified for the average small business owner manager whose core skill sets may not be IT. It's what they work. So it works really well. So we'll go ahead and we'll add in the admin's username, which was ntv-admin, and then go ahead and add their password in. Okay, so we've gone ahead and put the username. Ted, if you remember, we set that username up when we first did the installation experience. So this will go through and make the connections.
You ever wish you could edit as we're filming?
Oh, get some live editing equipment.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and restart this computer. It's part of the installation experience. It's going to go ahead and do its boot, so we'll be back in just a minute. All right. Okay, so we've gone ahead and rebooted the PC. The first question is going to ask you if you want to move all your settings. It's the first step to our backup process. So if you want to, if the PC were ever to fail, we've already got that image. So we'll go ahead and accept that. and then we'll make a couple more steps. We'll close off the installation experience on the PC, and we're good. So what does this ask? Review and modify the description of the computer if needed. I'll just call it TED PCs, and go ahead and close that off. Now, one of the important questions is if you've actually put your PC in sleep mode and you wanted to back it up, and whatever the time is that went to back up the computer's in sleep mode, you can actually decide to turn the computer on from sleep, back it up, and then put it back to sleep. Oh. And that's what this option is doing. So I'm going to go ahead and say yes, because I'm wanting to make sure that everything gets done. And then if you want to participate in the Windows consumer experience and help us understand how the product's benefiting you can, we'll just go for no for now. And that's it. So it's going to go ahead and configure the last mile of the configuration of the Launchpad, and that will complete the configuration between the PC and the server.
Okay.
So then at the end of this computer is fully set up, recognized on the server, and this particular user can go ahead and start working, going back to their daily routine, and not have to worry about backing up their PC or recovering it in the event of a failure. Once the installation is all complete, I'll show you what's called a Launchpad. And the Launchpad is just a very simple application that sits on the desktop that allows you to do certain things like look at the management console, open up a shared folder, do some remote access. You'll see that shortly. And it also displays a high-level alerts view as well. So if there's a certain amount of alerts on the, if there are alerts on the server, that alert view will give you that indication, so you don't have to keep going into the management console to check the status of the server.
And are for instance, the alerts that the client is popping up for you, do those vary based on the level of access, or like administrator level?
Correct, they do.
Set up on the server?
They do to an extent, yes. If you're labeled as a user admin, yes, you'll get some of those alerts.
Okay.
All right, hooray, we're actually done. The whole installation experience for this PC is now done, so we'll go ahead and click Finish. It is going to load the PC's desktop, and then we'll get right into the Launchpad.
Okay.
Okay, so what you'll notice is we've now logged TED and therefore this PC into the Small Business Server Essentials machine using Active Directory. So now we are officially joined to a domain. Okay. It's as simple as that.
Please ignore our other program pop-ups.
We'll do that. All right, so two views I wanted to show you. One is the Launchpad, and that's represented here on the left. Through the simple Launchpad, you can go ahead and start a backup, look at your remote access. Remote access is an internet gateway, so you're able to come into the server from wherever you are in the world and use the server as you would if you're in the domain itself, in the office. Second is the shared folders view, and then the dashboard itself. So we're going to go ahead and look at the dashboard. I'm going to go ahead and use TED's credentials to look into it. All right, so we've gone ahead and logged in from the PC, and what we're seeing is the administrator view. So the same screen that we saw when we were setting up the server for the first time, that dashboard is now presented here. And all the same functionality that I saw on that dashboard on the server is now here. So I'm looking at the user view, the computers in backup, the storage, and any add-ins. So all that is still here, and we can go ahead and start administering the server as we'd like. Again, those alerts all right here, and we can see what those alerts are right from here if we wanted to. So there's a warning alert. We'll look at it. What does it mean? Oh, we have to go fix something to do with Windows Update. Okay. Totally understandable. So easy to use, great language. So that is that. We're going to go back to the quick tasks list, which is right down through here. And for the purposes of today's demonstration, we'll go ahead and start setting up remote access and show you what that looks like from the actual dashboard out. So you'll get to see what that experience is like, logging into the server for the first time from a remote location.
Okay, and that really speaks to servers in general. Once you have them set up, chances are you're going to either store them somewhere secure. Maybe some places will have a server room if they have more hardware. Correct. Someplace out of the way, and then you can just use your standard desktop operating system environment to access that and still get all the functions that you would by being directly plugged in. Correct.
And you asked an important question earlier, Paul, which I guess now is a good time to address that, which is what's different between using a server or using a PC for this type of functionality. Yes. Servers have been engineered from the operating system to the hardware to run 24/7. And there are certain very specific technologies used in servers that you will not find typically in a PC. One important one is called ECC memory, or error correcting memory. That allows the server to recover from errors without having to shut itself down or reboot. And it's critical for server and server applications that those servers continue to run at 24-hour a day intervals. So very important message here with a server, and why is it important, is as it becomes the hub of your business, And as the users who use that server daily depend on it for file share, remote access, running business applications, or in general just running the business, you want server grade hardware that is engineered to run for long periods of time with no reboots. And most PCs from time to time will have to reboot for whatever the error is. You won't typically see that in servers. So the value to a business of purchasing a server over time is much higher than repurposing an older PC that doesn't have the technologies that servers have today. The good news is that over time, the price points on servers have come down to a very affordable rate. And the combination of small business server 2011 Essentials with Intel's platform is really a very good value for customers. So that's a big reason why we position servers versus a repurposed PC.
So you might still be able to recondition an old system to get some of the server functionality, but you won't necessarily have that reliability, especially over long periods of time if you're going to have the system constantly up and running.
Correct. And the biggest pain that we see, and it usually takes a small business owner manager one moment of downtime to realize that it's a better choice for them down the road. So that's it. Not a sales pitch, it's just the reality of running a small business, and downtime typically isn't something that they aspire to have at all, because they're focused on running their business, not necessarily keeping their IT up and running. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start configuring remote access from here on, and then we'll show you that functionality in the back end.
Okay. And now before we move on to our Q&A session, Jim just wanted to take a few moments to go over the Launchpad that you have as part of the client-side software.
Yeah, I wanted to bring to life a couple of the core features that makes administering this remotely very, very easy. It'll only take a minute.
Okay.
First and foremost, you can see up here there's a little chevron that points down. That allows you to adjust the settings of the Launchpad itself. So you can actually present alerts that are local to the machine or local to the network. And you asked a question earlier around the alerts, and do they report on the entire network or just that machine? So you can set that up here. Backup, if you haven't backed up lately, very simple. You can start a backup manually or adjust the time when it gets set up. Remote access, if you're working remotely, this allows you to tunnel back in over a secured connection through the internet back to the server. This is the shared folders view, so if you're ever looking to create a file share for the employees in that environment, they can easily access it just from a single click, go right to the folder that they have permissions to and access or store files on that folder, no problem there. And then certainly last but not least is the dashboard, which gives you this view. We did mention the alerts, being local or being across the network. Very simple click will actually present all the alerts. And again, it's written in language that the average small business owner manager could understand very quickly.
Okay. So
that's the Launchpad in a nutshell. This is some innovation that we've actually built in the product that we've never had in Small Business Server Classic before this version of the product.
And definitely very user-friendly.
It is.
All right, I think that wraps up for the software side. Anything else you want to add? All right, At this point, we are going to track down Bill, the server guy, and we're going to bring him in and do some Q&A. And now we're going to close this video with a few quick questions and answers about the server hardware as well as the server software that we have here. So my first question is for Jimmy B, the server guy. I should also mention we have both server guys here. We've made them promise not to fight. See, they work together. Just like Intel and Microsoft. Okay. So our first question here for Jimmy. A lot of home business users are very concerned about financials. And a lot of people, when they think of a server, they think of a big room in a business that has all, tons of rack mount servers that cost thousands of dollars each. At this point, with the hardware, the technology that's available, would you say that money is still a barrier to entry for those who want to step up to a server for their small business?
Not so much. We're hearing from our customers that that's actually not the most intimidating part of purchasing their first server. It's really about the server itself. So we tend to consider it a business hub. It's the hub for a business for all the same great features we've talked about today and that Bill has shown off today from a hardware standpoint. It has all the time resiliency and it's always up and running. It's using error corrector memory. So it is a server, it is a platform that you can depend on to run for a very long time. And then it has some key features that most people do care about in this space, which is the ability to back up their PCs, restore their PCs, access their files from wherever they are in the world, and also be able to administer the server in a very easy way. So they don't have any outside dependencies, they can do it on their own.
Okay.
On the hardware side, we At the end of the day, yes, there is a premium, but the premium has shrunk over the years. We now have Xeon server class processors that are, the E3 processor that we worked with today, that that's priced for entry servers, and it's priced competitively with desktop servers, desktop processors. At the end of the day, the platform premium, you're looking at a couple of $100 between a roughly equivalent desktop and a roughly equivalent server with ECC memory protection, with RAID. And the thing I like to point out is that if you do have a hardware failure, let's say a hard drive fails, the cost of recovering the data off that hard drive can be thousands of dollars if you have to ship it off to a recovery lab. And that's many, many times over the cost of buying a server that would protect your data to begin with.
Okay. And speaking of hardware, Bill, the next question for you is more hardware related here. Well, I guess that one was as well. But for a lot of people who may be watching this video and may think, wow, a lot of those features of the server seem like they'd be very useful to me for my home or more primarily for my small business, of course. And maybe a lot of these people aren't really the do-it-yourself types. What options do you think are out there for people who might want to get into this field, don't necessarily want to go with some of the large businesses that cater to larger businesses? What options would you say people have maybe in their community?
It's a great question, because many of the small businesses that we're talking about here today, they're run by people who they don't care about technology. Their primary job is, I want to help my customers, get their cars back on the road. I want to help my customers and cut their hair, or whatever my business is. My business isn't computers, and I don't want to know about computers. That's what we hear. There are local resellers, folks in your community. There's usually one or two in any metropolitan area, no matter how big or small, that do this sort of stuff for a living. And we're not talking about some nameless, faceless person on the other end of the phone, on the other end of the globe. We're talking about the guy down the street. And these folks are there to help small businesses through these decisions, to sit across the table from them and say, what are your needs? And given that information, here's a set of hardware that we can put together for you. So they would turn around and buy this very same set of hardware from you, put it together for you, or for the business, and they'd be up and running. So turn around and turn to one of these local resellers.
And Jim, anything to add?
Yeah, we in addition to these resellers, we've seen a lot of success as businesses talk to businesses. So we've had customers who've bought their very first server, just as what you've seen today, have really benefited from it, and they're telling their other friends who are also in small businesses as well, and that's how the network grows, and you start to connect to the right people. I want to stress a point that Bill has made, which is the hardware and the components and the software over time has gotten really, really good. And so we're at a point now with these combined offerings that you've seen today that having your first server, your business hub in your business is achievable, and the benefits are very big. Certainly when it comes to data protection and PC management, all the other stuff. It allows a small business to do what they're really good at doing, which is working on their business and focusing on their customers.
And going back to the cost factor, building your own server or reaching out to someone else to build a server for you using server hardware as opposed to, say, reconditioning an old desktop machine.
Correct.
You gain a lot of benefit there from a lot of the redundancy, a lot of the error correcting features.
Correct.
So you are much more protected in the event of a failure.
You are, absolutely. Servers are designed, as Bill can attest, to run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Really the only thing that shuts them down in most cases is a power interruption. Okay. But overall, very, very stable systems to use.
And now one final question, and I'll direct this to you, Jim.
Sure.
At least at first.
Okay.
A lot of home business users maybe are running their business out of their home. A lot of small business users, I should say, running their business out of their home, or maybe they have a very small facility. A lot of these people have precious data, those important maybe accounting numbers, the type of information that you would store on a server and have backed up. A lot of people also have precious data that is more personal. You might have photos or files, things of that nature that you also want to keep backed up.
Correct.
Would you recommend a crossover for a lot of these types of users to be able to use the home server software as well as a home server itself? in order to protect not just their business data, but also their personal data.
Yes, Home Server is a fantastic product. We've had it with us now for several years. Interestingly enough, if we were to set up Home Server right next to Small Business Server, you would see that the management interfaces are identical, with the exception being a green banner versus a blue banner. So if you are a home business owner today, or sorry, if you are a Home Server owner today, and you use Small Business Server Essentials, you'll actually translate a lot of your understanding that product directly into Small Business Server. If you don't have a Home Server and you are thinking about buying Small Business Server, and you do want to use it as a backup for your precious memories, absolutely, it's a great tool for that. It backs up your home PCs, it'll back up your business PCs, and it's always going to be there and available. And in the event of a PC failure, and you can imagine the impact of a PC going down to a small business, it renders that worker inoperable for a little while until they get their data back. With the combination of our solution that we've showed today, you can have that person on a new PC rendered using what they were using prior to the failure back up and running in a matter of minutes. And that's the important value here. It helps the business get back to doing what they do, which is their business.
Very nice.
That's a great question. When you talk about the crossover between home use and business use for a small business, I know that the three of us and many of the folks watching the video, we're technical people, and we tend to serve as the technical support for a lot of our friends and family. And I know I'd be willing to bet that each one of us has had someone come to us and say, "Oh my gosh, my system failed, and my family pictures, they're gone." Number one, I hate to see that happen, and I won't even set up a system for a friend without having a mirrored hard drive at least. But take that scenario and move it over to a business. Number one, a doctor's office. I mean, that's very personal data for all their, the patients. Number two is, if I'm a reseller, that's the last thing that I would want to see happen, is for one of my customers to come back to me and say, my data, it's gone. So there's parallels. And if we're talking about a customer who's got a situation where they are working at home, boy, this is a great opportunity for them to have great reliability and redundancy that they might not otherwise have at home. So it's a perfect opportunity to cross over.
All right, and on that note, I think we are going to wrap things up. I'd like to thank all of you folks out there for watching this video. We hope you've learned a lot more about servers, as well as the Small Business Server 2011 software from Microsoft. I'd like to say a big thank you to Bill, the server guy from Intel. Thank you, Bill.
You're very welcome.
As well as Jimmy B, the server guy from Microsoft.
Thank you, Paul, for having us today.
Thank you very much,
True pleasure.
Thanks you all again for watching, and if you're interested in more tech videos, please check out our Newegg YouTube channel for more videos just like this one. I'm Paul with Newegg TV for Intel and Microsoft. Thanks for watching. See you next time.